Evening, Bennington. Welcome to the, and anybody else that's watching, welcome to the Bennington Select Board meeting for September 14th, 2020. My name's Donald Campbell. I'm the chair of this board, and I'd like to ask the board to please introduce themselves, starting with Bruce.
Good evening, everybody. Bruce Lee Clark here.
I'm Jean Connor.
Hi, Jeannie Jenkins.
Good evening, this is Jim Carroll.
Hi, Sarah Parent.
And also with us tonight, we have our town manager, Stuart Hurd, our assistant town manager, Daniel Monks. Cat TV is on the line. Nancy Lively is our secretary. She'll be taking minutes tonight. And Shannon Barsati, our community development director, is with us. And we're expecting Mark Anders from the BCRC to join us shortly. So before we start this meeting, I need to read the following statement, which is that due to the COVID-19 pandemic, state of emergency declared by Governor Scott and pursuant to Addendum 6, Executive Order 1-20, Act 92, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. There is no physical location to attend this meeting. However, the public may view it on Cat TV and call in at 1-646-558-8656, entering the meeting ID 821-9235. 6353. I'll put that up on the screen in just a minute. If technology fails us, we will continue the meeting at a time and place to be determined. All votes that are not unanimous will be done by a roll call vote in accordance with the law. And as always, if you need to reach any of us individually, the select board emails are on the town website, as are those of the town staff. So let me start by sharing this number, which is the call-in number. If you think you might like to talk tonight, then this is the number that you'll need in order to be able to dial in. So again, 646-558-8656, and then you will be prompted to enter a meeting ID, and that number is 821-9235-6353. You'll be asked to enter the pound sign twice. When prompted, do that, and you will be entered into the meeting waiting room, where you will stay and hear music, I believe, until you're entered into the meeting. We will take people into the meeting at the appropriate time in the order that the calls were received. So again, meeting ID 821-9235-6353. Okay, the first order of business tonight is going to hold off just for a minute. Before we start the meeting, let me pause briefly to reflect on the fact that it's been a really difficult summer for almost everybody. Our community struggled along with many Vermont towns, battling a relentless virus, looking for ways to keep our local economy going, trying to figure out schools, childcare, jobs, getting food on the table, and sometimes just the act of trying to keep our heads, wash our hands, remember our masks, that kind of stuff. Many of you have also had to suffer the unpleasantness of severely disruptive noise from SVC, the masked but legal gunman hanging around Main Street, or the inconvenience of having so many of our usual meeting places closed. It's true there have been some wonderful moments, like the highly creative Bennington Battle Day and Garlic Town celebrations, along with an almost completed walking trail along Kosher Drive to Park Street, resumption of work in the Putnam Block and the Recreation Center, and nearing completion on some of our pocket parks, to name a few. But still, this time of quarantine and economic uncertainty has taken a toll on all of us, there's no doubt about it. And in the midst of all this, our entire country's been coming to grips again with centuries of unequal treatment for Black and Brown people. So two very tangible ways this has manifested itself in our community are the advent of police reform efforts following the adoption of the IACP report this spring, and the painting of the Black Lives mural in late August. Police reform's been at the top of our agenda all summer, as you know, as the community's been invited over and over to participate in the process of looking at policies, outcomes, and eventually some form of citizen oversight. So with all of this going on, it's critical to remember who keeps us safe and who keeps acts of democracy from dropping into anarchy or violence. At the BLM mural painting in August, the Black Lives Matter is a national effort openly critical of racist flaws in America's police practices. It was 14 men and women of Bennington who kept everybody safe. And we need these Bennington employees to know that we are thankful for the great effort they made, especially at an event where they perhaps felt almost entirely unappreciated. So the following people especially deserve our thanks and respect for doing a great job, no matter their personal feelings. Paul Doucette, Cam Grandy, Nicholas Jones, Jason Burnham, Michael Strzyzee, Roscoe Harrington, David Fadden, Michael Sharshan, Corey Kingston, Robert Murawski, Scott Legacy, Benjamin Lackey, Daniel Ferreira, and Amanda Knox. These are the officers that showed up for the BLM painting. Very difficult job for them, and they did a great job. To you people in our police department that helped us with that event, thank you for keeping us all safe. So I'd like to move into the first order of business today, and that is our consent agenda with the minutes of August 24th and the warrants as circulated and the liquor license. Now, the minutes you've all seen, the warrants you've all seen, as is our custom. Hopefully you've had a chance to ask any questions of Stuart about the warrants. But if you have any questions on any of these items, now would be the time. Not seeing any, I would look for a motion.
I would move to adopt the consent agenda.
Thank you, Bruce. I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jeannie. Any further discussion? If not, I'd ask everybody to please unmute themselves. And all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Thank you. Okay, so that is the consent agenda. Before we pass on much farther, I'm going to again put up the, whoops, did that wrong. Share my screen. I'm going to again put up the call-in information. Our next item is public comment. This is a time when we allow and invite people to call in with comments about town business. And we know that this is not always easy to do by Zoom, but we are doing the best we can with it. So if you have any comments for us, please dial 646-558-8656 and enter the meeting ID 821-9235-6353. I'm going to stop sharing this. I don't see anybody in the waiting room right now, but I also don't see Mark Anders on this call yet. So we are a little bit ahead of schedule. He's probably planning to come in at 6:20 and it's 6:10 right now. So let's see, is there some part of this Benmont Bike Ped additional funding thing that you would like to cover, Dan, in Mark's absence, or shall we shift the agenda around?
I'd suggest that we go to Shannon for the next agenda item, and I'll make sure Mark gets on the call soon.
Okay. There's somebody in the waiting room, so I am going to enter this caller. There are now two people in the waiting room, so I'm going to enter these callers into the meeting. So I have entered a caller ending in 840 into the meeting. And caller, before I unmute you, I would ask that you please turn down the volume on whatever it is that you're using to listen to this meeting so that we don't get any feedback. So I'll unmute you and ask you to please give us your name and your for some reason this is not unmuting people, and I'm not sure why. Caller ending in 840. I believe I've unmuted you. If I have, please welcome to the meeting, and please give us your name and where you live, and tell us what's on your mind.
Good evening, Chairman. How are you doing this morning? Can you hear me? Or this afternoon?
We can hear you. Is this Sam Racino?
Yes.
Evening, Sam.
Commissioner Bennington, Vermont. I have a concern that happened 7 months ago. Back in 2019, there was a emergency meeting, and that topic is about a warming shelter. I don't want to start having a conversation when we're in the depths of winter. The time is of essence now to start planning and planning slowly. What are we going to do about a warming shelter, a location? And basically, it's just what I refer to as a code blue situation. When temperatures drop about 32 below or 32 degrees at night, they have a place for them to get out of the elements. And when morning arises, they're back out on the streets. So now is the time that select board members need to think about this wholeheartedly and find a solution, because I don't want to read in the paper, and neither do you, of another possible death this year.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate your comment. And your reminder, just so you know, we have been working on this, and Jeannie in particular has been, and Bruce also has been working on this. I'm not sure, I think other select board members have also, but this is something that is really important and very difficult because of COVID. As you know, that changes things quite a lot. So,
and liability and bringing things up to code, and but it kind of muddies the waters a little bit. Be it known, when we go down through the agenda tonight, I will be commenting on other matters. I will leave now to let others with their concerns. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight.
Okay. Thank you. And so, Jeannie, I'm going to ask you, I know that this is citizens' comment. It's a time for people to comment and not necessarily for us to be involved in dialogue. But this is a really important issue, made very serious for us last year, obviously, yes. and every year, but last year really came to a head.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I know you've been tracking this because you and I have talked about this on an almost weekly basis, but would you give just a very brief update to the community? Please?
Yeah. So actually, Sarah Perrin and I have been involved with this, and the warming shelter group began working last year, as you know, back in the winter in earnest to start this process. We had a hiatus when COVID hit. We began meeting again in April or May, I can't remember which. We do have a plan in place. I'm not sure we're going to be able to do the full plan this year, but it involves having a daytime warming shelter, and there are a couple institutions who are seriously thinking about how to make it work in their space, and coupling that with evening vouchers. And we would have two sources of vouchers. One would be the state-sponsored vouchers, which have increased for this winter, and the other would be privately funded vouchers through GBIGS. The group that's been meeting includes the Coalition for the Homeless, GBIGS, State Human Services Director, Brock, I'm trying to think who else, some individuals from the Interfaith Council, and some private individuals in the community that care about this issue. And either Sarah or I have been there at every meeting. It is complicated, particularly because of COVID, because there are a lot more restrictions on use of buildings right now. So it may be that we have difficulty putting in place the daytime piece of this for this winter, although we are still working on that. But we do think we have the vouchers so that no one needs to stay outside during the winter unless they choose to stay outside.
Jeannie, that's great, and I think it's a good summary. If you don't mind, maybe we leave it there, and we could do this as a meeting agenda item at some point in the future. I mean, I do think this is one of those things that we have to keep tracking as a community. So, and Sarah, I apologize. I got you and Bruce flip-flopped. You all are carrying so much water now. I can't remember who's doing what, and I appreciate the fact that you are. I'm going to enter the next caller into the meeting. Caller ending in 196. I've entered you into the Bennington Select Board meeting. Welcome. Before I unmute you, I would ask you to please turn down the volume on your television or your computer, or however you're listening to this show, so that we don't have any feedback. And for whatever reason, I am again having trouble unmuting. I don't know if this is a Zoom thing or not. There we go. So caller ending in 196, I think I've unmuted you, and if in fact I have, please tell us your name and welcome to the meeting and tell us what's on your mind.
Yeah, my name's Mike Bethel, you know me.
Hi, Mike.
And to unmute, you got to tell people, I guess they just told me to push *6. That's where you're having the problem, I guess.
Yeah, usually I can do that from my screen here, and I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong, but anyway.
Well, they can push it. I just did it from *6. Anyway, do you have it on the agenda tonight about the signs that I would like to put up at the town hall?
No, we do not.
I thought you were going to on the 14th.
No, tonight we are looking at a policy on public spaces and messaging. After we get that, so we'll talk about that when we get there. But we got a lot of compliments and a lot of criticism for the BLM thing. But of all the criticism we got, some of it was they just didn't like the message of racial equality that BLM's getting after. But other people, the majority of the people, felt like we didn't have a good process in place and we didn't follow that process. And so we've taken that to heart, and we are working to develop some kind of clarity so that we have a predictable process that people can go through.
Well, don't you think part of the problem was because you haven't got All Lives Matter and Police Lives Matter or Blue Lives Matter?
No, I don't think it's part
Don't you think that's what's part of the people are complaining about? That this is so one-sided that you let RAD come in
No,
here?
what we're hearing is that the process was flawed. So what we're going to do is look at a process, and we're going to look at setting up something which people can see and read and understand ahead of time and know how to participate in. So that
All right, I'm before that policy is in effect then, correct?
we are not approving any signs or any messages until we have a policy in place.
Well, how come you didn't do that with RAD?
Perhaps we should have, and we didn't. But we've made, if you take that we made a mistake or handled that poorly, which is some people's contention, we're certainly not going to compound that mistake by making it again. We're going to put something in place.
So under your new policy, if you pass your new policy,
everybody can understand.
If you pass your new policy, are my signs going to be able to be put up?
We have to have that discussion tonight about what's in that policy, and I welcome you to call back when we get to the point that we're talking about that.
How long is this policy going to take to go into effect?
How long is it going to take to go into effect?
Yes.
Don't know. Well, I can tell you we'll be discussing it at 7:00, from 7 to 7:30.
Well, no offense, Mr. Campbell, but every time I think of something that I would like to do, you always seem to find out a reason why I can't do it. And this is going to hurt nobody to put up All Lives Matter and Police Lives Matter or Blue Lives Matter. It's not going to hurt anybody.
Okay. There may be those that disagree, but Mike, I'm just saying we're going to develop a policy before we approve any other messages.
Well, you better develop a policy where I can put these two signs up, because I think this is very unfair, quite unconstitutional. And what you put in the paper was ridiculous. That you can't have colors, you can't have stars, you can't have flags. I mean, this is a democracy still in Bennington, isn't it? Or are you people warping this into something that we the citizens, don't seem to want?
This is a democracy in Bennington, Mike. And
okay, well, when you...
a process that everybody can understand, we're working on being very...
When the six geniuses that... Listen, hey, it's my time to turn.
No, it's about your time to get off the line, actually.
Oh, it is? You used up most of it.
Well,
you didn't want Walmart. You went against Walmart. You don't want anything progressive for this town, except when a group from RAD can come in and threaten your position, threat Stu's position, and threat other positions, you people cave.
That's not the way we
I
see
don't
it.
like that. I don't
Not
think
the
the
way we
people
see it.
do like that.
That's not the way we see it. If you have
It's
any
not
other
the way you
points to
see it.
make, you may make the points now, and then I'm going to ask you to get off the line, please.
I'll get off the line, Don, but I want to talk to you privately sometime. Can we do that?
Okay, give me a call.
Yeah, bye.
Okay, thanks. Right, I'm going to enter the next caller ending in 311. I've entered you into the Bennington Select Board meeting. Again, I'm going to try to unmute you. While I'm getting ready to do that, I'm going to ask you if you would please turn down the volume on your computer or on your other device. So caller ending in 311, welcome to the Bennington Select Board meeting. Please tell us your name and tell us what's on your mind.
They're still muted.
No, I don't think so. Caller, oh, they are, yeah. Let's see. Caller ending in 311. I am having technical difficulties unmuting you.
Hi.
There we go. There we go. Gotcha. Okay.
All right. Hi, it's Mary Garris from Bennington.
Good
I
evening.
hope everybody's well tonight. I actually wanted to make some comments on the proposed policy relative to some proposed amendments, minor amendments to it. Is that something I should call in later about, or
Yes,
are
please.
you taking?
Yep. No, we're just doing citizens comment at this point, and
Oh, I'm sorry.
we would welcome
Okay.
your comments on that between 7 and 7:30 if you want to be part of that policy
Thank you.
discussion. You can.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Yep. Bye. Okay, we had one more caller. That caller's gone. So we are going to move on from public comment to the Benmont Bike Ped Path. We got Mark Andrews. We have a big green bee there. Is that you, Mark?
That's me. I'm here, Donald.
All right. You feeling shy tonight? Sort of
I will
hiding
start my
behind the
video.
bees?
Sorry.
That's right. You got the COVID beard. Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Mark, we have a fairly, we've looked at this proposal on and off for several years. It always excites me, the idea of doing something with Benmont Avenue, but why don't you start from scratch here with what it is that you need from us tonight, please.
Okay, sure. And is it okay if I share my screen, Donald?
I have to make you co-host first, just a minute.
Okay.
I have it set up so that not anybody can just throw stuff up on the
Right.
screen. It's a security measure, so you don't end up
Sure.
having Jim Carroll throwing, cartoons up on the screen or something like that.
What?
Just kidding, Jim. Okay, Mark. So I think I've made you co-host at this point. You
Okay,
should be able to
great.
share your
Okay,
screen.
I'll share screen. Okay, so can you see the?
We see your whole thing. Maybe
Okay.
you could put it in slideshow mode.
Yep.
There
Okay.
you go.
Can you see it?
Yep.
All right. So this is just very short, and we've been working on this project for a while. We got a grant in 2015 to do design and construction, and we've made a lot of progress. We have all the easements that we need. The design is mostly done. We have most of the approvals we need for V-Trans. And as you know, it's a federally funded project, and unfortunately those projects are fairly complicated. So it takes a while, but we're getting through it. So because we haven't talked about it for a while, I'll just go through briefly just why we're doing the project. As I'm sure everyone knows, because we're all familiar with Benmont Ave, a lot of people walk on Benmont along a shoulder, and it's not always very comfortable. It's just a shoulder, and there's a lot of traffic. And also, the Hunt Street intersection is really kind of a mess. This Hunt Street comes into Benmont at an angle, which is not really very safe. There's a slope. It's not safe for pedestrians. As you can see, the sidewalk just kind of ends. And a lot of people, actually, this is dirt because a lot of people actually walk there. This is really not a very friendly pedestrian environment, and I think we can do a lot better. In Bennington, this is not going to encourage people to walk or come to town. And another issue is there are these really huge driveway accesses, so people kind of pull in and out at anywhere they want, at different angles, at high speeds. And the result is, this isn't a very good slide, but when we did the scoping study, we looked at 5 years of crash history on Benmont, and I was shocked that there were 91 crashes and 29 injuries just on that stretch of Benmont. So it's really a safety problem for everybody, pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers. So this project kind of addresses all of that. And so we've been working with NSK Engineering, and sorry, I apologize, my slide is stuck on this green slide. Let me go back. Okay, so I won't go through the whole plan set because we probably don't have time. It's a long corridor, but I thought I would just talk about the Hunt Street intersection. So we have completely redesigned the Hunt Street intersection, so Hunt Street comes in at a right angle. We've moved the entrance for the school bus yard, and they are totally okay with that. They actually prefer this, and we got an easement from the owner of that parcel. And there will be a shared use path that will go along the west side of Benmont all the way to Benmont Mill. So where all those people are walking the shoulder, now they'll have a beautiful path, and there will be planted medians with trees between the path and the road. And also we're gonna do some access management by the gas stations. And then the other side of the street, there will be a on-street bike lane. And so, this is probably kind of a confusing image to a lot of people. So basically, this is what we're talking about. This is a rendering that this awesome Vista volunteer did a few years ago. But basically, we're going to put in these granite curbs right around the driveways, and then grass and trees, and so people have this protected space. And I think it will also make the street much more beautiful. I think it's kind of aesthetically challenged right now, but this will make a really nice streetscape, and it'll make Bennington, I think, have a lot more curb appeal on Benmont Ave. Now, because when we originally talked about doing the project, we did not include the Hunt Street improvements, and that is actually the most expensive part of the project. As we started developing the project, we realized that really couldn't solve Benmont unless we completely redid the Hunt Street intersection. So that has added a fair amount of cost to the project. So in order to do it, we do need to apply for another VTrans grant. And we're about $671,000 over budget. That's the latest cost estimate from the engineer. So the grant breakdown, it's an 80% federal share. So the feds would cover about $537,000 of the new grant. The local share will be about $134,000, and we'll apply for a $671,000 grant. And the grants are due at the end of September, so I'll be working on the grant application if the select board approves the application. So that's really all I have. Are there questions?
I might start out while the board is getting its juices going, just by saying thank you for bringing this. We really would like to see this get done, obviously, and would like to see it get all the way done. So in summary, it sounds like we're looking at $134,000 local match to get about $1 million project done, which seems like that's the kind of price breakdown we normally like to see. So, happy to hear about that. I'd like to hear from Stuart in a minute of how we might fit that into the budget. But before we do, does that Hunt Street correction also get people further on? In other words, beyond the rental car place and the KFC, what happens going out that direction? Would you like to?
Well,
as you go further,
we'll be able to. It's going to be much easier for pedestrians because there'll be a crosswalk to the sidewalk on the west side. And then I think we're going to include bike lanes all the way to Kosher Drive. We've talked about doing that. And also, that's how you'll access the Ninja Path. We're going to Hunt Street is a very quiet street, and you can get to the pedestrian bridge, and then from there you can get onto the Ninja Path. So that's why this is also sort of a really important intersection. And hopefully we hope to also connect to the rail trail, and we will have a connection to the rail trail by where the greenhouse is on Benmont, where the Bennington, Bank of Bennington ATM is. So people will be able to get to the rail trail from there. So that Hunt Street thing is going to be this kind of node for all these bike paths that we're planning, which is another reason why I think it's important.
I guess what I'm getting at is there are there hidden costs? Are there other things that are coming down the pike as a result of this, or are we really looking at 134,000 really gets us done through Benmont and Hunt Street?
I think it does. Yeah. We have everything in this budget. We have the street trees, and we can always look at some value engineering if we don't get all the money, or if we look like we're going to exceed the budget. So I can't. We haven't put the project to bid, so I can't guarantee that we get a bid that would come in at this. But I think it's a pretty big project. We're talking about a major corridor in Bennington, a complete redo for a pretty modest local match. So, I feel pretty good about the budget. I think it's going to add a lot of value.
And Stuart and Dan, how would you see this fitting into our local budget?
I'll speak, and Stuart can obviously fill in. So we do budget funds every year for sidewalk and streetscape improvements. So we would use some of that money, and then we would look at annually what our project costs are, and obviously we'd have to commit some of those project costs to this particular streetscape and corridor improvement. I will say that Mark didn't mention, I think he alluded to, we do believe this is a very realistic budget in that we have had recently bid out projects and got real numbers, and there's no indication that we're in any way below what we expect as far as those budgets are concerned. And since we are so far along on this, it's fully designed, all the easements are granted, and all the V-Trans approvals are granted. We don't expect any surprises. Essentially, if we get this funding, we can proceed. And the only thing will be timing it so that we have the funds in our local budget for the match. But other than that, we don't expect any significant delays that would jack up the prices or give us, add extra cost.
And when do you think those local funds would hit our budget? Would it hit the 2021 season, or when would this be needed, Mark?
I guess optimistically, I would say we would build it next year, but I think more than likely would be the following year. I would love to say we're going to build it next year, but we'll see.
So we're probably looking at FY 22 or 23. Is that what you're saying, Mark?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, we should be able to. If that's the case, we should be able to budget sufficient funds in FY 22, perhaps additional funds in FY 23, and we do have a small amount of money in reserve for highway improvements. So I think we're going to be fine.
Okay. I've got two hands up from board members. Jim, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark, we haven't really seen any elevation pictures, and my direct question is, will there be curbing as well as cement sidewalks along that corridor?
Well, the way the plan is drawn now, there will be granite curbs around the what they call the driveway return. The driveway returns around the radiuses around the driveways, but there will not be
on Hunt Street.
Not on Hunt Street, on Benmont.
Okay.
Yeah, and but the way we have it now is that the water would drain off the road into the grass medians. But we are looking at the the engineer wanted to take another look just to see if he thought we would need curbs along all of those planted areas. So it's something we just have to look at in the final design.
So, will there be an elevated sidewalk in the sense that?
Oh, well, I can go back to the plan. I guess that would involve screen sharing. There will be an elevated sidewalk a little bit along Hunt Street, but it won't go all the way down Hunt Street.
How about up Benmont?
Yes, you'll be able to. There'll be a sidewalk along the entire western side of Benmont once this project is done.
Okay.
The
Cement slab.
The path will not be elevated. It'll be separated from traffic by these medians.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so no cement slab. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. No cement slab.
Yes or no?
No, there'll be no cement slab. It'll be an asphalt path, kind of like the one we just finished on Kosher Drive, but it'll be a little bit narrower. This one will be 8 feet. The one on Kosher Drive is 10 feet, and it'll be protected from traffic by those, by these grass areas with trees in them.
Mm-hmm. And curbing with them.
Curbing just around the driveways, to prevent people from driving on that grass areas.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Mark, does that also help with stormwater, or is that why you did it that way, or is that a value engineering thing to try to save?
No, that was a stormwater thing. I think the idea was the grass would act as a filter for the runoff. But as I said, the engineer wants to just take another look at that just to make sure that that's the best thing to do with the stormwater. But we're going to hopefully address that in the next design phase.
Okay. Let's see. Next is Jeannie, and then Jean.
Yeah, so Mark, this is fantastic. I love it. I really like the fact also that there'll be options that you can, that you can move onto the Ninja Path, you can move onto other paths. What does that mean for signage? How will people know as they're going down Benmont that they could, scoot off and end up on the Ninja Path, for instance?
Yeah, I think we have to have some really clear signs. If you, I guess they call them wayfinding signs. So, you're riding along and it'll say, well, going to the Ninja Path or to Bennington College, you go left here. And if you want to get to the rail trail, you go right. So I think that's really, really important. Just so people who aren't familiar with the path network, once it's done, will be able to navigate easily.
Yeah. And so
we don't have any signs in the budget in this project, just because we want to kind of get it built first and then see where the signs will be most effective. But I think the signs are really important, especially as we build out this path system in Bennington.
Yeah, and so is the reason? Are you thinking just that it's going to take 2 years to get this done, just because of the projects that are in front of it, or for other reasons? I mean, why couldn't we do it next year?
Well, I guess, we have to figure out if we get the grant. I know the state has pretty limited funding this year just because of COVID. And so.
Okay.
I guess maybe I'm just, after having worked on these path projects for many years and just gotten the Kosher Drive one done, I'm really excited, but I'm also, maybe it's growing up a Red Sox fan or something. I'm just a pessimistic person. So I don't want to promise that we'll get it done next year.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay.
Sure.
Jean, go ahead.
This is great. I used to live over on Pageant Street, and trying to get past the bus station and onto Benmont was a nightmare. So I don't live there anymore, but the people that live there will greatly appreciate this more than any of us, I'm sure. So would it be accurate to say that it sounds like we will get the grant, even if it's not the complete grant? It sounds like you're extremely optimistic, and am I right in making that assumption?
Well, V-Trans does tend to give grants to projects that are already underway. And I think really the only issue is whether we get it this year, or we get the full amount this year. And I think it just has to do with how much funding they have, because the state government is having some funding issues. And it also depends on how many other projects apply for this grant. It's a competitive grant, so I'm not sure how many. We've gotten every grant we've applied for in the past, so I'm optimistic, but I can't guarantee that we get it. But I think eventually we would get the funding.
I'd also just like to make a comment, and I'm thrilled about this for so many reasons, but I think first and foremost, it will be so wonderful for the people that live on Benmont Avenue. It's going to just change the way they think about their street and where they live and their neighbors. And I just think it's going to be really, really transformative for the people that live on Benmont Avenue. And that really makes me feel great.
Oh, good. Yeah, I think it will too. I agree with that.
Sorry, Sarah, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I think I love this. I love the draw. I wondered if you could email out the plan. I couldn't really see it too much, but I want to learn more about it.
Sure. Yep. I can email you the plans. Absolutely. Okay. I'm happy to.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan.
Specifics.
Okay, that'd be great. And yeah, I'm a huge fan. I think just to say what Gene was saying, this is going to be great for Benmont, just for the community as well. But you know what? My main concern is, where are people going to take their driving test now?
Good to have all angles covered, Sarah. Thank you.
It'll be even better for driving tests after this.
That's very true. Fewer accidents.
Right.
What, if I may ask, for tonight, Dan, are we looking for a motion this meeting?
Just a motion to approve the application for additional funds for the Benmont Bike Ped project. Mark, will that do it?
Yep, that'll do it.
Okay.
So I'm looking for a motion along those lines. Does anybody feel so moved?
I do.
Bruce, thank you very much. So
I happily
approve
making a
Benmont
motion.
Avenue active transportation corridor application.
And I'll second it.
That as read.
Well, Sarah can.
Great.
Sarah can second. That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, any further discussion from the board? Let me just check. There's nobody waiting in the waiting room. Any further discussion from the board at this point? My only, this is my only thing, of course, is we will have to feather this into our budgets. If we are going to do this, I'd love to have us start paying for it now, or start planning for it now, so that we end up not having a big hit when the time comes to actually write the check for it. And I did hear you saying, Mark, that there will be other opportunities for value engineering along the way. That is engineer speak for letting yourself get chiseled down by by boards, as prices start to look daunting. So I think we will probably be pressing you pretty hard on some of those details as you go along. But no point in doing any of that until we know if we can get this federal money. Yeah. So I have somebody in the waiting room. I'm not sure that they're waiting to talk about this, but let me enter them into the meeting and just make sure that we are covering our bases here. So caller ending in 840, we're talking about a Benmont Avenue active transportation corridor grant application. And if that's something that you would like to comment on, now would be a good time for it. Please give us your name and tell us what your thoughts are on this grant application.
Yes, Chairman Campbell, I have two questions. My name is Sam Racino once again this evening. Am I allowed to speak or?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. We're having a problem. We have to unmute ourselves by doing *6. Two questions. I'm asking in the project, I'm having a hard time visualizing this, but we're on the west side, would any property from Tennybrook to Bennington Tire, will any residents have at least 10 feet of their property taken on this project? And two, who's going to maintain this? Is it V-Trans or is it the town of Bennington for the sidewalks?
I can answer both of those questions. There will be no property taken. We did get an easement from the person who owns the bus the lot where the buses are stored, and we got an easement from the enterprise rental car. We needed a little bit of land to do the realignment of Hunt Street, but the other properties, we don't need any. It'll all be in the public right of way, and it will be a town-owned project, so it will be maintained by the town.
Great. And yes, it will beautify Benmont Avenue, as you know. Speaking from the masses of prior years when it was Benmont Papers and industrial, still zoned industrial, but it will certainly enlighten the benefits of Bennington when and all is done. It's going to take some time. I estimate in 2 or 3 years, but I hope you do get the grant. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you for pointing out that we are, for whatever reason, having some technical difficulties. So I will continue to try to unmute callers as they come in, but if I'm unable to do it, the caller can press *6 and be unmuted by themselves.
Correct.
I still have to enter you into the meeting, but once you get into the meeting, if you see me struggling, I'm pushing the button and it doesn't seem to be unmuting. So hopefully somebody more sophisticated than me is watching this meeting and will send me an email tomorrow saying, do something different.
You're doing fine.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Thanks for the call. So, board, I would say that there's a motion on the floor and we have it seconded. I would not normally have entered citizen comment after that point, but this is COVID and we need to be flexible. So it's good to try to let people in when they call if we can. So I would say, barring any further discussion, I guess I would ask you all to please unmute yourselves, and I would ask you all in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, Mark, get that grant. Bring the money to Bennington.
Okay, I will.
We'd really like to have that part of town spruced up in the way that other parts of town are starting to get spruced up. So thank you very much for your efforts.
I'll do my best. All right.
All right. We'll let you sign out on your own. Shannon, we have a couple of community development grants from you next, right? Yes. No?
Yeah.
Yes. Municipal facility and public service grants. Public hearing, and you said 3, but why don't I let you take it from here and describe exactly what you're looking for.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. I guess it's grant writing season. I already had a grant that I was planning on putting together before these other municipal public facility grants came along. And the first one that I wanted you all to consider is, and really I'm just asking you to move forward with the application at this point. Each one of these has a resolution that has to be signed by the select board for us to move forward. And the first one is for a municipal planning grant, and that's to do a market study of what will be the former Energizer facility. And we wouldn't be using any town funds for this. We would be matching funds from the municipal planning grant with those from the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation to do a brownfield analysis as well. So we'd be looking at any possible reuses for the Energizer facility, and following something similar to what we did for the Bennington downtown area wide plan. So that's the first one that we're working on. And the municipal public facility program is something that's been put into place recently because of CARES funding. So federal funding for COVID relief has now gone to the Vermont Community Development Program. Now, usually those grants are much larger, like the one that we spoke about for Shire's housing at your last meeting. These are smaller grants, up to $50,000. The town is actually eligible to apply for 5, and it's similar to the Shire's grant in that it's a pass-through. So the town applies with a partnering nonprofit, and the funds come to the town, but then go to whatever nonprofit is applying, and these are for COVID relief. So particularly things that are eligible are, public facilities such as childcare. Also, the Bennington Coalition for the Homeless is looking to apply, and for things like ventilation systems, which everyone is looking at as a necessity right now during COVID, as well as other supplies like PPE and sanitizing supplies, etc. So we had 3 grants. I actually just heard today from Sunrise that they would also like to apply. So I'd like to include them as a potential applicant, if that's okay with you guys, because they're also looking at ventilation for their buildings as a necessity. So the 4 that are looking to apply for the Municipal Public Facility and Service Program are the Bennington Coalition for the Homeless, Bennington County Coalition for the Homeless, the Sunrise Family Resource Center? Sunrise Family Resource Center, and they run for their childcare facilities. Also, the Berkshire Family YMCA here in Bennington is looking to expand their school age program, and so they're also wanting to apply for this. And UCS, their United Children's Service, that's at the Bennington Rec Center, what they're building as a new addition. So all 4 of those programs would like to apply for COVID recovery funds through this Municipal Public Facility Program. And each of the resolutions are in your packet except for the Sunrise one, but it would be the same format. So I'll take any questions that you have.
Questions for Shannon from the board? Shannon, any potential downside of these for the community? Any hidden costs? Any gotchas? Anything we need to worry about?
Well, I'd say the biggest downside is that I sort of can't do anything else except for grant writing for the next couple of weeks, and administration. I was hoping that the community development program would sort of cut us some slack here, but they're still fairly labor-intensive applications. So, but we are working together. So each of these programs is also designated as someone who can also work on the application. And I'm asking for their support so that I can do the municipal planning grant as well. But other than that, I feel like we should try to get whatever federal CARES Act money we can flowing into Bennington. And so it's worth sort of putting other work to the side to really hustle and get this done.
It does feel like a good thing to do. This CARES Act money is not going to be there forever. And if it's doing important work, I'm glad that you're on it and that you're able to be on it. So Sarah, you have your hand up. It may have been up for a while and I didn't see it. Go ahead.
I actually just suck it up. So great ideas. I like this. These are all, I'm just confirming. So if you could just say yes, no, whatever. Sarah, thank you. Confirming these are all grants. These are all coming from out of town. These are not taxpayers' money. Is that all correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Not local taxpayer money.
No, the majority of these are federal. And all of that money has to be spent by the end of the year. So that's part of the push to get it done quickly.
So other questions? Let's see. I have hands up. Jeannie first, and then Jim, please. Go ahead, Jeannie.
I do think this is, Shannon, I know this is going to take a lot of your time, but I do think this is really great, and I think it helps. I think the study on the old Energizer plant is really important so that we can move forward with that, revitalizing that area. And I think the 4 VCDP grant applications are fantastic because it's all work that should be done anyway. And so we're going to end up with, better ventilation systems, just, better buildings for for our community. So that's fantastic.
I also think it's great that 3 of those are, well, 1 is for the homeless shelter and then 3 are for childcare programs. So these really are essential services for the community.
Thank you. Thank you for you did a lot of work to reach out. You could have ignored it and we wouldn't have gotten these grants and you wouldn't have do this, but you didn't. You reached out and and took on the work, which is fantastic. So thank you.
Well, we still need to get the grants, right? We still need
to get them.
Yeah.
So it might, maybe they made it so difficult that only those of us that are willing to go through the motions will get them. We'll see. Fingers crossed.
Let's see. We have Jim and then Jean, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Shannon, for the work that you did. And, there are some critics out there who just think that, we're grant crazy. Well, I don't think it's grant crazy. I think it's grant smart because that's federal money. And if we don't take advantage of it, somebody else will. And that's how the Shire's housing has come to be in the town of Bennington in the last 8 or 9 years. It's meant close to $30 million in building beautiful apartments and with local contractors, and that's meant a boost to our economy. So if we don't take advantage of that money, somebody else will. That's just my comment.
Thanks, Jim. Go ahead, Jean.
Yeah, I was having a similar feeling to hearing about these grants that I had when I was thinking about the project on Benmont. These are people in our community that we need to take care of, and I feel like the money is going to go to people that really, really need it and will benefit from the projects that will happen because of it. So again, it just really warms my heart that this money is going to go to people that really, really need it. And that really makes me feel good again.
Okay, well, thank you, Paul, for your thoughts on that. There is a caller in the waiting room. Seems a little unlikely that caller ending in 302 wants to comment on municipal planning grant and municipal public facility and service program grants, but I'm going to enter the caller into the meeting anyway and see if that's what's on their mind. Caller ending in 302, we've entered you into the meeting and would ask you to please turn down the volume on whatever device you're watching this on. And for whatever reason, once again, I am unable to unmute you. And so I'm going to, which is weird because normally I have been able to do this with callers. But if caller ending in 302, if you can press *6, you will be unmuted and you will be in our meeting. Looks like you've done it. Thank you very much. So please give us your name. And again, we're talking about municipal planning grant and municipal public facility and service program grants. Is that what's on your mind? Caller ending in 302? No. Okay.
Hi, my name, I was just waiting to speak about the policy regarding the signage and things of that sort.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I thought that might be the case. We're running just a little bit behind, but if you don't mind, I'm going to put you back in the waiting room, and but I will bring you forward when we get talking to that policy, or you're welcome to call back in. If you called back in around 7:15, I think that would be probably about right. Would that work out all right for you?
No, I can do that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. So we are I am looking for a motion on these municipal development grants, municipal planning grants. Anyone have a motion on these?
Do you need 1 or do you need 5?
Well, what do you think?
I think
Shannon?
you need 2. I think you need at least 2.
One for Energizer and one for COVID-19. How's that?
That's the way I would look at it.
All right. Do we have a motion on the Energizer property reuse plan?
So move.
Thank you, Bruce. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, please unmute yourselves, and I would say all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? No? Okay. I would look for a second motion on a series of municipal planning grants that focus on COVID-19 relief for childcare after school services and the UCS and the YMCA and the Head Start facility
And the homeless shelter.
and the homeless shelter.
Coalition, yep.
Coalition.
Somebody like to make a motion to approve those, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Jeannie. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank
Second.
you. All right. Any further discussion? If not, I would say please unmute yourselves, and all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Okay. Thank you, Shannon. Let me add my thanks to Jim's and others for your pluck when it comes time to getting after this CARES money, and we hope you're successful in bringing a lot of it to Bennington. It's good work.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you. I'll let you exit the meeting on your own. The next item on our agenda is a community.
Do we have to go and sign all those resolutions, or can you sign them for us?
I can sign for you.
Okay.
Yep. So I'll sign as the chair, which is what we've been doing since COVID. The next item on our agenda is item number 5. This is our standing community policing update. Jeannie, would you please take this, or take, I guess, Jeannie, Bruce, and Jean.
Yes.
I would look to you three to give us an update on the work you've done. I know you've had a lot of progress recently and had a lot of community input recently. So
We've been very busy. We have been very busy in the last 2 to 3 weeks, I would say, launching the advisory committee process. And I'm going to turn it over to Jean to talk about the committee process, about the interview process, because it was fantastic.
So last week, Jeannie, myself, and community member Lon McClintock, we interviewed 23 members of our community who raised their hands to join one of the policy review committees. I think it was unanimous. It was one of the most wonderful experiences I've had in a long time. Each one of them was more thoughtful, more passionate, more caring. It was truly amazing. So thanks to every single one of you who raised your hands to do this. We were able to place everyone on a committee that really aligned with their passion, what they do professionally, their skill set. The whole process was seamless. And I want to just send out kudos to Beth and Michelle in the town office. They did a spectacular job organizing the interviews and preparing the room. They made it really easy for us. So I've sent them each an email, but I'd like to publicly thank them as well. I'm going to read off each policy and their committee members, so everyone knows their names. And I just thought of something else I should mention. The group of people was really diverse, which was wonderful. It was our goal. We made no effort to make sure that happened. It just happened organically, and that's the best way that could have happened. So I'm going to start with the use of force, response to active resistance, duty to intervene, and use of CEW. So these are the people that are on that committee. The first one is Peter Niles. The second one is, what's his first name? Dan Burgess? They're not alphabetical. Daniel Murgis. Let's see, Grace Wilson and Allison Levy. I can't remember how to say her name.
Jean.
Yeah.
It's Peter, Dan, Ricardo Wilson.
Oh, Ricardo Wilson. I'm sorry.
And Allison Levy.
Yeah. Who did I say for Wilson?
Somebody else.
Oh, I said Grace. Fair and impartial policing is Father Bob Wiseman, Kate Canning, Greg Berta, and Alana Hart. The investigation of hate crimes and reporting is Grace Winslow. Bivens, hang on, sorry. Jamar Bivens, Cindy Taylor, and Mark Blank. Response to persons expressing a mental health crisis is Asher Edelson, Kaya Ganuli, Valerie Gray Shemeth, and Al Bashevkin. Motor vehicle stops is Robert Ebert, Kara Lusa, and Lon McClintock. And the last one, domestic violence, is Lauren Wilcox, Janice Larigo, Peter Lawrence, and Eleanor Hilton. Did I get it all right? Okay. So anyway, those are our committees. They're chomping at the bit to get started. We assured them that we would let them know when each policy was going to be voted on by the select board so they can attend if they'd like to. And they all seemed pretty excited to be able to do that. So I think that's all I have to say. And Jeannie or, well, Lon's not here, but Jeannie, if you have anything to add, please do.
Well, I was going to talk about the process, so that'll get us to, I think, the one other thing that we probably do want to talk about, which is people, anyone that wants to observe.
Right.
But in terms of process, we have just, I think either today or tomorrow we'll have the process that we have been following up on the website. And I think, as we said earlier, these first 6 policies that we are looking at are among the 12 that the IACP recommended and are policies that the Bennington Police Department recommended that we begin with. They thought that these would be the most useful for them. The policy committees will meet. There is a schedule up on the web. Most meetings are Wednesdays from 1 to 4. The fair and impartial policing policy is actually meeting from 4 to 7 on Wednesday, but the dates are up there. After the policy groups meet, their work will be for review to make sure that we've crossed our T's and dotted our I's. Am I still there? And so it will be reviewed by legal counsel, it will be reviewed by the police department, and it will be reviewed hopefully by the Attorney General's office, right? The state's attorney's office. After
interrupt here, Jeannie. Your sound quality is really terrible. I'm not sure if Bruce, if you are in a position to take over for Jeannie, but it's really difficult to hear her.
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to work any better, but it may. And Jeannie, straighten me out if I miss a step.
Hey, pardon me for just a second.
Sure.
But in Zoom meetings that we have in the legislature, if Jeannie were to shut off her video, we'd probably be able to hear you, because your connection is probably overtaxed. It's what's worked in the past.
Yep, that's also true.
But Bruce, go ahead.
Okay, so once it's been reviewed, then it will come and been approved. And by the way, I should, in addition to the names that Jean read out, we should at least acknowledge that Dan Monks and Dan Ferrara from the police department and I will be at all of the meetings. And so once it's been approved, then it will go to the select board, actually, for review and eventually for adoption. And that's the time when people will also have a chance, people from the community will have a chance to weigh in on the content of the policy. And once it's adopted, it then will be put up on the police department's website, I believe.
That sounds perfect. So thank
Son
you.
of a gun. You're welcome.
Okay. So
go ahead, Jeannie.
Yeah, so I was going to say, so the other thing we just wanted to let people know is that we are continuing to look at what happens, what the next steps are. So once we get these policies underway and we see if the process that we've outlined works as well as we hope it does, then we'll start looking at the next 6 policies for the winter adoption. And we're also beginning to think about how we can have the conversations, broaden out the conversations around community policing using the work that's been done by the researchers and other materials that are up on the website. And we are also watching the legislature to see what they do in terms of oversight or review board. So we are trying to move forward and still be mindful that the legislature and the governor also have their fingers in these actions.
I'd like to add one more thing. I don't know if Jeannie, you may have said this, and it may have been part of what dropped off when you lost your connection, but the public is invited to go to each of these policy meetings, but they're not going to be allowed to participate. They'll strictly be there as an observer, and there will be limited number of seating for COVID reasons. So if you're interested, the schedule, I'm not sure if it's up yet. Beth is on vacation, I think, but the schedule will be posted on the website. And like I said, you will be able to attend, assuming there's not too many people there, but only as an observer.
Right, and it begins 9 days from tonight or today on the 23rd at 1 o'clock on the 3rd floor of the firehouse. I should add that if anybody wants to see the kinds of documents that we're going to be looking at, that's also available on the town's website. And the people who maintain that have been doing a lot of work in trying to make sure that that's up. The other thing that I would want people to know is that we've received a great deal of support from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns and PASIF, who is the insurer for the police department. They have model policies, and we will be utilizing many of theirs. So they've been very interested in the work we've been doing and very supportive. That's all I have.
And Bruce, all of that will be available on the website as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay. We're done, I think.
You folks have been working really hard on this, and it really is very pleasing to see how many community members are getting involved in this. It's been great that the community stepped up for this despite COVID and everything else. So thank you for your efforts on that. Keep us posted.
And thank you to the people of Bennington that responded.
Yeah, thank you to the people of Bennington.
Keep it up.
And we'll look forward to your next update at our next meeting in a couple of weeks. So I think it's at this point time to move on to our next item. Let's see, we are running about 15 minutes behind in schedule. We're looking now at a policy on displays, signs, art on public property. This is something that I'm going to let Stuart talk about this in just a minute, but I will say that shortly after the BLM request was approved, we began hearing from people that they didn't like the process. They didn't think the process was transparent enough. They didn't think it was clear enough. And so what I know about this is that our legal counsel has drafted it for us, and it is largely based on some work that was done in Montpelier for the very same reasons. And it's before us tonight, and I think it's important for us to give it a really good read and to consider before we enter into any other, as I mentioned when I was talking to Mr. Bethel earlier tonight, before we enter into any other commitments with groups or individuals, that we nail this down in terms of how the town responds to these kinds of requests. So Stuart, I would like to ask you to please give us a little bit more history on this, and then I would like someone to give me a summary by section. And I'm not sure if that's Stuart or Dan, or if we need to kind of do that ourselves, but I think that's what we're looking at now, please.
Well, I think you really, you hit the history in a nutshell. Basically, this is generated from town council who watched our meeting and watched the process and listened to some of the feedback that we received here at the office and reached out to, or vice versa, Montpelier might have reached out to her individual that she knew, indicating that they had developed a policy that was all encompassing. Dan and I did a quick review, and I may look to Dan for more of the detail on the review because he's looked at it much more carefully than I have. But it does encompass all displays, signs, and art on public property, which includes town offices, front yard. It includes all of the streets, sidewalks, other places such as our parks, where people may want to display works of art or comments. Certainly, we're attempting to, I think, discourage political messages on public property, and obviously things that would not be in the public interest. I think, and Dan can go into a little more detail on this, you as the select board control the speech that comes off of public properties. Yes, there is the right to free speech, but you have the right to control what speech is generated and is used or comes upon public property. So you folks control the message, and I think it deals with some of that in here as to what messages mean, how this may conflict or not conflict, but how it may be different than the right of free speech, where everybody has a right to say or speak as they wish, or place signs on private property, or any of those kinds of things, as long as they conform to local sign laws. But you folks control the messages that are placed on public properties. Am I getting that right, Dan?
Yes, I think it's very important. And Stuart, I assume you sent along Merrill's memo on government speech, but good. So, a lot of people confuse free speech with the government's responsibility to manage public property in the interest of the public, for the public good. It doesn't mean that everybody and anybody can do anything they want on public property. The government has the right to create policies and to put forth its own messaging, subject to reasonable standards. So what this ordinance or this policy, it's not an ordinance, what this policy attempts to do is put in place guidelines and standards for anybody or any group or any institution, organization, et cetera, that would like to install, signs or art displays or paintings or anything that's other than a public demonstration or holding a rally or something like that. This does not affect any of those particular types of freedom of expression. This simply this only applies to what we'll call semi-permanent installations of physical objects or on public property. So I think it's important for folks to understand that. And I think the meat of this policy is really in the guidelines and the standards contained in section 6. So that's I think where most of the discussion probably will happen. But I'm happy to discuss or try to answer any questions folks may have about other specific sections. I will say that our attorney drafted this very carefully and said that any changes we make, we have to be very cognizant of constitutional issues. So any proposed changes, I would say we need to have council take a look at before we adopt them, just to make sure we're not running afoul of any constitutional issues.
Okay. Is there anything about this document itself that you would like to summarize, Dan, or do you feel like we should skip right to the section, the guidelines section?
I guess the only thing I would mention is that there is a clear process of how these types of things are reviewed and by the select board. It does require a select board to sponsor, a select board member or members to sponsor anything that would be placed in the public right of way or on public property. That's a pretty common way of doing things, so that it ensures that there's at least one champion within the elected government. And other than that, it's very clear about safety guidelines and technical review. You know, all those sorts of things have to be dealt with before the select board should reviews and decides whether or not the installation is something that they would like to approve.
It does feel like this is getting at some fairly squishy stuff, but some really important stuff. So if you don't have it in front of you at home, you know, the guidelines are important. And if the board would indulge me, I might just read the first 9 guidelines, not so much the standards, which are things like no logos and no copyright laws and stuff, but the 9 guidelines that it talks about, and this is the part that interests me, I think, the most, is that number 1, it enhances community identity, pride, and unity, provides the highest quality artwork available, promoting excellence in demonstrating diversity and a variety of media. Number 3, it increases public exhibition opportunities for artists and craftspeople who live or work in and around Bennington. Number 4, it encourages public participation and interactions within public spaces. Number 5, it represents a positive interest or value worthy of public recognition. Number 6 is creating awareness of how surroundings impact experience. Number 7 is enriching the public environment for both residents and visitors through incorporation of the arts. Number 8 is striving for diversity. And number 9 is reflecting the social, ethnic, and cultural fabric of the town. So those are the guidelines that every project must include. And then there's a number of standards that follow. So just very briefly, no logos, no living person's images, no breaking the copyright laws. There needs to be a primary contact, no image of the United States flag for clear reasons, partly that it's illegal. No profanity or obscene material. A project may not be designed or located in a way that is perceived to be commenting or modifying or altering an existing project. Projects must be dedicated to illustrative of an idea, a concept, or principle that promotes community and public good. The project in whole, including the context, timing, and whatnot, must have a primarily positive message. The safety of the public roads is important. The can't in any way impinge on traffic. The paint must be low toxicity. All projects must be in compliance with state and federal regulations, and that the primary contact must clean up and dispose of paint in an appropriate manner. Almost done. The paint should be applied in a high quality manner, accidental spills cleaned up. All projects installed for a fixed period not to exceed a certain number of months. We can talk about what that would be. The primary contact would be required to provide proof of insurance in the name of the town as co-insured, and the primary contact may be required to post a bond or similar surety to ensure compliance with these provisions. Now, some of these are for much bigger, more valuable works of art than what we're talking about, but that is a very rough summary given to you on the fly by me of the guidelines and the standards that are reflected in this proposed policy. So I'm going to take a break just for a minute here and stop talking and look for some hands from board members first. We have a couple of people in the waiting room, but I'm going to go to Bruce Lee Clark first and then Jeannie. And then we will probably open it up to callers. Hi, Bruce.
Thank you, Donald. Actually, I don't really, I mean, I have questions about those. My question actually goes to what you seem to think, or maybe others think is an ordinary thing. I'd like wiser heads to explain to me just why the primary contact person, who is, I take it to be the leader of the group or organization or whatever that wants to do this, why they must obtain a select board sponsor. It would seem to me that puts the select board member in a peculiar position of already pre-approving, or at least being in an issue of having a conflict when the eventual approval comes up. I'm sure there must be a reason why this is done, but quite frankly, it left me queasy, and I would probably not want to see that sentence of Section 7 in there unless I can be persuaded otherwise. So I'm just laying that out there. I for lots of reasons, don't like it. And I might be persuadable, but I quite frankly would have to hear something more than it's a gatekeeping function, because quite frankly, then what we're talking about is creating a gatekeeping function for speech. And I know that government speech is different than First Amendment free speech of individuals. I know about that. But I don't like us acting as a gatekeeper. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sponsor is a little different from gatekeeper, but I understand what you're saying. I think I could make a case for it, but I did promise to shut up for a while. Other members of the board want to respond to Bruce before we go to Jeannie?
Well, I want to respond to him.
Sure. Hey, Jeannie, go ahead.
I'm turning off my video. All right. So I actually think this is a really wonderful aspect of the policy, because I think it goes to the idea of fairness for both the person who is bringing an idea to the board to know that there is at least one person on the board who thinks this is a reasonable thing to explore, and also fairness, I think, for the community, because I think one of the things this summer has been very hard for a lot of reasons. And I think someone could bring a very inflammatory idea to the board, an idea that no one might support, but could cause a whole lot of havoc in the community, with people being very upset about something really terrible that someone wants to do, when the board knows that none of us are in favor of it and none of us are willing to actually champion it. So I don't want to waste the sponsor's time in developing a proposal that has no chance of having a sponsor or having anyone on the board approve it. And I don't want to upset the community when there's no reason, when something is really outside the range of what we want to do. So I actually do think that's a real significant fairness issue. And I like Dan's use of the word champion. I do think there has to be, if there's no one on the board that thinks it's a good idea, then you can mention it in public comment, but it doesn't have to go beyond that.
So can I, Mr. Chair, if I could?
Go ahead, Bruce. I think Dan also wants to respond, so I'll let you.
Great. And if either of them, to what degree then does that create a conflict at the time of the voting of the proposal? Does the select board members championing of this create an issue of pre-voting? I get, Jeannie, I heard your explanation, and it makes sense to me, but I am I'm gonna have to think more. So Dan, help me out.
I guess I'd first say that I wholeheartedly agree with Jeannie's comments, but as far as your comment about conflict of interest, you're a political board. It's perfectly appropriate for you to, as individuals on the board, to advocate for ideas and messages. It's to say there's a conflict would only be a conflict if you were getting some sort of financial compensation, which I know that no one would do. And if they did, they would have to declare that conflict of interest and not vote. I think it's a very important part of the process to make sure that at least one select board member thinks it's worth considering, the whole board and the whole community considering and taking up time and effort and energy to review these types of proposals. I just keep going back to our attorney's memo. You guys control government speech. It's your responsibility to send the message to the community. So it's perfectly appropriate for you guys to say that at least one member of the elected officials should at least consider that it's worth bringing forward. I'm not even saying that I would think that the person would be a champion, but Bruce, if you feel uncomfortable and you think everybody should have a shot, then maybe you're the guy that always sponsors all these things and you get to tell the board why it's worth them spending all this time dealing with these proposals. So everybody has that opportunity on the select board to bring forth proposals that citizens or groups are putting forward.
Thank you. We'll probably have more conversation on that. It's a worthwhile thought, Bruce. I do feel like we need to set some sidebar. The purpose of this policy is probably to put some sidebars on how much time we spend in potentially destructive conversations in this community. But I digress. Let me go first to Jean Connor and then Sarah and then Jim Carroll. So Jim.
Yeah, thanks.
Hang on,
Thanks.
Jean, Sarah, Jim, and then I'm going to pause on board members and invite a couple of people that are hanging on the phones in.
First of all, I don't think we got the memo from Merrill. We got the.
We did. It was attached. There were 2 attachments on the email that Stuart forwarded.
Oh,
it was confidential. It's a confidential memo from our attorney.
Okay, I didn't see that. Sorry about that. So I listened to Bruce and I kind of agreed with Bruce, and then I listened to Jeannie and I kind of agree with Jeannie. So I can see both sides. I guess I have a question. Let's just say I sponsored a proposal. I could still vote against it. There's nothing to prevent me from voting against it, which probably would be a little uncomfortable, but I still would have that ability to do that. The other thing I was thinking, if someone came to one of us with a proposal that we weren't quite sure about, we could call or speak with other board members to see how they felt. Is that not true? I mean,
I think the word champion may have, if I could just jump in for a second, I think the word champion, although it's helpful, I think it may have derailed slightly on this. I think somebody could choose to bring something to the board just because they think it's important for the board to chew on it. So I could say to Mike Bethel, who called in earlier, all right, I'm going to bring this to the board because I think it's worthwhile having a conversation on this. I might not vote for it. I may well not vote for it, but for whatever reason, maybe I think that's worthwhile having a conversation about. So I think it's a little bit like signing somebody's petition, when they're running, or signing a petition, to put it on the ballot. It's like, well, I may not vote for it, but I'll sign the petition. I do think that there's an element of that to I don't like gateway either, but I think this sort of light filtering of board members bringing forward things that they feel the community really should talk about or would get something from. And so it's not quite champion, it's not quite filtering, but it's something in the context of finding an elected official who represents the public, who would be willing to say, yes, this is worth the board taking up. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I guess the other concern I have is, depending on the proposal and depending on who the person is, what the makeup of the board is at that time, there are going to be certain people that are repeatedly asked or not asked, depending on the subject matter of the proposal. So
but that's democracy. That's
Yeah.
you know that I mean you ideally people elect somebody into this position that they feel good about, that represents their emotions, their feelings, their aspirations, and that they can talk to. They have something like this, they bring it to that person, and it goes forward. And if it's something that's broadly considered to be very destructive by all board members, then it may not see the light of day at the board meeting.
It possibly could have the potential of dividing a select board. Anyway, I understand the value of it. I also can see some pitfalls.
Thank you, Sarah and Jim, and then let's let some callers in here. We've got 3 in the queue.
Yeah, I think what Jean said just kind of, I was almost gonna not say this, but I feel like it's pitting dad against mom sort of thing. But yeah, that wasn't where I was gonna start. I feel like this policy might, having a support by a select board member might be a little exclusive. So maybe there could be a channel as to how that starts, still having that same function. But I think overall it's a good policy. Maybe, and I think I would be in support of adopting this as an interim policy tonight, and then possibly revisiting it and doing something again at our next meeting to tweak it a little. But that's just, I think it might be a starting point.
Thank you, Sarah, for that observation. And it is always possible for, I said something about not seeing the light of day. It's always possible for people to come to a meeting and say, and express an opinion, right? So somebody could come to any one of our meetings and say, I think we need a sign on the front lawn that says Donald Campbell's a dud, you know, and that could be their cause. And maybe some select board members willing to take it up, but there's nothing to stop somebody from, coming and saying what they want at the open part of a meeting. So that could be another channel. It also could happen with an email blast. Somebody could choose to email all select board members and say, hey, would somebody please sponsor me in this effort? So, Jim, I keep talking. Go ahead and make your comment, please, and then I'm going to go to caller 3-1 and caller ending in 311 in just a minute. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'll second that sign, the motion for that sign about a dud. I mean that in the nicest possible way.
All right.
Anyhow, the horns of the dilemma on this are that, and I think that we're opening up a Pandora's box with this. And what, I think what many people may not understand is that, we as a governing body cannot deny someone their First Amendment right to speak because we are a governing body. And people often confuse the rules that Facebook and Twitter lay down about free speech. Well, that's a private entity, and they can set whatever rules they want. We, however, have to abide by the Second Amendment, or First Amendment, sorry. And I just think we're walking into a buzzsaw that could potentially allow anybody to come before the board. And despite, the wording and what was sent to us, I just think we're walking into a buzzsaw with this.
Well, to be clear, we're walking into a buzzsaw or 10 buzzsaws if we don't do anything. So, but your point is taken that it would be possible for a town to say we're not going to have any messages ever on any town property ever. That would be a no buzzsaw. But anyway, if you don't mind, I'd like to get some callers in here because it's really overdue. And I apologize to the callers that are waiting. I'm going to admit the first caller ending in 311 and caller ask you to please turn down the volume on your computer or your television, however you're listening to CAT TV. And it looks like you've unmuted yourself. Thank you very much for that. And please give us your name and tell us what's on your mind.
Hi, this is Mary Garish from Bennington. And I wanted to make a couple of comments on the policy. primarily that I think it's a good thing to have such a policy because it provides some guidelines so that people don't feel as though they're out of the process. I would say that in section 6B, sub 16, and just for people who don't have the policy in front of them, that is one that says that all projects shall be installed for a fixed period of time, not to exceed 12 months. And then there is a section under section 7B for post-installation, which says the town, or I'm sorry, that's the wrong comment. There is one under post-installation which allows the select board to expand the period past 12 months at their discretion. But what I would suggest is that in that subparagraph 16, right where it says a fixed period not to exceed 12 months, that they put subject to section 8 sub 5, because if people are reading a policy and they find what they think they're looking for, they frequently don't read further. Whereas if you refer to the exception to this rule you're creating in section 16, then they will look further. Then the other thing I wanted to say was that relative to the following installation section, which is post-installation section 8, it talks about maintenance and repair of the painting remaining the responsibility of the primary contact, which of course, in my opinion, should be. I will say though that relative to maintenance and repair, we've had some communication issues on that. So perhaps there should be a specific, simple procedure, like by emailing the town manager and the chief of police, who will respond within a certain number of days, either saying yes, no, or we can't do it then. Because I think that would be clearer for people. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that, this isn't the first street mural that we've had in Bennington, and of which the town has been very proud. There's the keyboard at the Four Corners, which everybody seems to enjoy, and I enjoy, and I think tourists enjoy. And that has certainly been there for longer than a year, and I hope it continues to be there. So I guess the question is, in terms of effective date of this policy, I understand that frequently policies are deemed to be effective on the date that they're approved. But you might want to put something in that is like a grandfather clause, or not, relative to the existing 2 street murals in town. So those are my suggestions, and I will let you go to somebody else now.
Thank you, Mary. Appreciate you joining us. So I'm going to let the next caller into the call here. She brings up a couple of good points, but let's just get some voices in here from the community, and then we'll do some chewing on some of what we hear. So caller ending in 302, I've entered you into the Bennington Select Board meeting. I'm going to try to unmute you, and again, I'm unsuccessful, so I'd ask you to press *6 if you can. And please give us your name and tell us what you're thinking about this policy that we're discussing.
My name is Mary Ryan. I'm from Bennington, and I have some concerns regarding this policy. Number one, I do believe we're opening up a buzzsaw with this, and I think the policy should be that there should be no additional artwork or things of that sort. The BLM mural is beautiful, but I don't think maintenance, it should be considered a one-time community event, and maintenance should not be kept on this. And My sister visited from another state, and she said that Bennington was a beautiful New England little hamlet tucked into the mountains. And I'm just concerned about signs and signage or artwork or whatever becoming a clutter as opposed to artwork. We have a policy in Vermont that says no billboards, and you can see the beauty of the state. I think I'd like to keep the pristine vision of Bennington and have no signs, no murals, no nothing, regardless of how long it is or how, the time parameters. I just kind of like the beauty of Vermont as it is.
That's great. Thank you for your thoughts on this. And
One other thing I'd just like to say is that if you allow certain special interest groups to begin posting, it's going to be opening up a platform for opposition. And even though the select board will have a say whether or not it gets put up, it is going to be an onus on you making those decisions. It may become, unfortunately, who is presenting it or who you know on the select board. And I just don't think that would be very fair to the select board at all.
Yeah, it certainly has the potential to become a very divisive thing, and a big time-consuming thing too. I think it's probably worth just mentioning to you. I'm sure you know this, but we're really talking about works on public land at this point. So there is some control over what happens on private land, but that's a whole different system that goes through our sign ordinance and goes through our sort of other ordinance systems. And I don't know, Dan, if you'd like to speak very briefly about that, but Ms. Ryan,
so what's the difference between a policy and an ordinance?
Well, so Dan, would you like to explain if somebody came to us and wanted to do a mural on private property, what the process would be for that?
So it would depend on the purpose of the mural. Obviously, there's the government has the right to regulate different types of speeches with different types of standards. So when it comes to commercial speech, so if you're advertising your business, we have fairly broad powers with regard to regulating that. So if it was a mural that advertised a business, and it would have to be an on-site business because there is no off-site signage allowed in the state of Vermont, so the billboard law. It would have to comply with our sign ordinance. So if it was somebody who wanted to paint, a political message on the side of their building, we have very little authority to regulate that if it's purely political speech. But if they want to paint something on the side of a publicly owned building, the select board has virtually exclusive control over that as the governing body that controls that piece of property. And then there's varying levels of control between purely political speech and purely commercial speech. But it's a whole different ballgame, private property versus publicly owned property.
So if somebody owns a building in Bennington proper in the town, and they want to put up something, since it is privately owned, does that mean that you have no control and no say of what goes up?
It depends on the type of speech. If it's purely political speech, like somebody wants to, for instance, when there's a governor's race, if somebody wants to put that I love Governor Scott on a sign in their front yard, we do not have the authority to restrict that, except if it's a safety issue. If it's private property and purely political speech, we have virtually no control over that as a municipality because it's constitutionally protected political free speech.
Well, I still think I'll go with my no billboards, no artwork, or no signage would be preferable to me, but I'm just one voice. Thank you.
It's good.
Appreciate the time.
You're a good voice. Thank you for coming in. And I do think I didn't mean to distract that conversation by talking about commercial, but we appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you.
All right.
Can I just ask a follow-up to Dan? I'm thinking we have 2 murals on sides of private buildings that forsberg and I think and someone else painted one at the UU, and then I can't think of the building that the other one's on. But and so those, did we have, does the town have an ordinance that has, you know, that in any way a mural painter would have to follow if they were painting a large bird, for instance, which is what those two are?
So the answer is yes, Jeannie, especially in the downtown design review district. Those should be reviewed. I don't know if they were, and it's certainly okay if they didn't, as long as nobody's concerned about it. But technically, they need to be reviewed and approved by the Historic Preservation Commission as complying with the design standards for our downtown. But if they were not in a design review district, and they were not, you have to be really careful. Sometimes people say, "Oh, I'm painting a mural. It doesn't have anything to do with my business." And let's say they sell hamburgers, and you got a big picture of a hamburger on the side of the building. You know, that's commercial speech, and we have every right to regulate that. You know, if it's completely unrelated art form that doesn't have anything to do with the business, then we have very limited ability to regulate that, at least under our current ordinance. So there may be some way we could get more control over that, but I don't think there's any desire to do so. But we have to be very, very careful about artistic expression and First Amendment rights being practiced on private property.
Jim, I see you have your hand up. Is this on Ms. Ryan's point still, or are you, is your hand just up?
Dan just answered my question, so
okay. I'm gonna
never mind.
Thank you. I'm gonna let the next caller in then. So caller ending in 241, I've entered you into the Bennington Select Board meeting. And if you are able to, please press *6, which will unmute you and bring you into our meeting to join us. So caller ending in 241, welcome, and please give us your name and tell us what's on your mind.
Hi, my name is Dan Petruka. So first of all, thanks for your time. I think Bruce brought up a really good point earlier. I'm less concerned about the gatekeeping function, but I think there's a certain risk for select board members when sponsoring installations that it might be regarded as a sort of imprimatur or approval of the content. And I totally understand your point, Dawn, about, I don't support this, but I think it should, be vetted in public or go to the board for approval. But I think this sort of nuance is probably going to be lost in practice and possibly have electoral consequences for board members. So I think that's an issue because it's probably going to skew some of the content that's approved as artwork, and certain segments of the community can potentially be mobilized against a particular board member because of their approval. I would suggest that maybe a better criterion for going to the board is meeting a certain threshold of support, something like meeting a certain number of signed or signatures on a petition as the primary criteria. I think some of the organizational and procedural requirements of getting these types of displays approved is already going to tend to guarantee that there's not too many requests for the board, and then having to provide a signed petition should cut out some of the most extreme elements. That would seem to be a more democratic way about doing this. Reading through the proposal and the reporting on it in the banner, it does seem there's a certain amount of arbitrariness here, but I do think this board sponsorship component is probably the most problematic element from what I've seen so far.
Okay, interesting thoughts. And thank you for doing the homework to read it ahead of time and read the banner proposal on it. We always like it when people have call in and have already done their homework. Any other parts of it that got your attention that you would like us to look at, or is that the main thing for you?
That's the main thing. I mean, I think there's a lot of other issues with it too. I certainly think some of the criteria are fairly arbitrary. A lot of it seems to be, honestly, somewhat ad hoc. And I think to a certain extent, it seems designed to sort of prevent the type of thing that Mike Bethel is proposing, particularly with some of the language about not being an installation that's perceived to comment on an already existing installation. So I'm not interested in nitpicking the entire thing, but I think this potential petition component is probably the most important, just to avoid, obviously, as Dan suggested earlier, much of this is going to have to go through council because it is dancing pretty close to First Amendment infringement issues. So at any rate, that's kind of my main perspective there. So
how would you feel, depending on how our legal counsel felt about an either or situation? So either, it seems to me like if you have a really good idea, getting a petition can be a lot of work. There might be something that would be easily championed or whatever that might not need that level of work, but it could be somebody could either find a member of the board to champion or get a certain number of signatures if one's not immediately available. What would you think about that, and what would the board think about it?
Certainly, I think that's certainly less objectionable than what's currently on the table. I do think there's still, there's going to be a certain tendency for the content to be skewed on, along the lines of political viewpoints of board members, but I think that would certainly be a good compromise.
Yeah, I see what, I do get I think I get what you're getting at, which is a lot of times in this day and age, short speech gets weaponized, so if you're unwilling to agree with some short little pithy phrase, it can be held against you in mightily, and without the benefit of nuance and sort of deeper discussion. So I think that's partly what you're getting at, and it resonates somewhat for me, but I'm not quite sure what to do about it yet. So other board members, questions for Dan? Jean, your hand's up.
You mean for Dan Petruka or Dan Monk?
Dan Petruka. Dan
No,
Petruka,
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
No, I don't have any questions for him.
Dan, I'm going to thank you for calling in. Thank you for your opinions, and we'll keep working on it.
All right. Have a nice night.
Okay,
Thanks.
You too. So I had another caller in the inbox. That caller has since hung up. Maybe that we've gotten too late here for people. I know we're pushing 8 o'clock here. Jean, your hand's still up, but I think that's probably an old hand. No, okay. So other thoughts from the board on where we...
No, it's not. It's not an old hand. It's a new hand.
New hand, sorry. Bad phrase. So Sarah had an idea for us that was floated earlier on. I don't know if we feel ready to have an interim policy or not. I think I'm not ready to approve anything without a policy in place. So at some level that becomes kind of a de facto interim policy, but I also would be okay to, I'd be okay about entertaining a motion for interim policy or having our attorney, asking our attorney to look into changes. So I guess I'm going to throw it back to the board for groupthink here. What's the feeling of the board?
I think we need more time to think about this, Donald, and I would like to hear from Merrill about this. Let's not jump the gun on this. Let's take our time.
Go ahead, Jean, but say it loudly because you sound
okay. Okay. First of all, can someone who knows clarify the timeline of when this policy first bubbled up? Because I think that needs to be addressed based on what Mike Bethel mentioned earlier this evening. I'd like clarification on that. And how have policies similar to this worked in other communities? Does anyone have a sense of that?
This community this policy was largely based on Montpelier, and I don't know what Montpelier based their policy on, if they wrote it from scratch or not. Stuart, Dan, any hints for us?
I do know that it's based almost exclusively on the Montpelier policy with some expansion, but I don't know their experience or where it came from. It was recommended by and developed by our attorney, basically to make sure that we do have a policy for going forward, so we're not accused of arbitrary and capricious decisions.
When did that happen?
I think that was about 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, Dan, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was. If you're asking whether or not it was in reaction to a specific request, no. Our attorney was already working on it when the latest specific request came in, but that's neither here nor there. We knew they were going to come in, and and our attorney was very adamant that we should have a policy in place. Certainly, she will, make sure that it complies with the select board's wishes, but she's very, very adamant that we need to have something in place that complies with the various tenets of the Constitution.
Nancy Lively, we lost Jeannie Jenkins for a second there, but she's back in. I don't know if the minutes need to reflect that, but anyway, part of things. So go ahead, Bruce, and then I'm going to enter another caller. Oh, Sarah's got her hand up too. Sorry, Sarah first, then Bruce, and then I'm going to go to a caller.
I think, given the discussion that we've had, I would be comfortable having this interim policy in place with an end date of our next meeting. And I guess some discussion, yeah, that's my comment for now. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Bruce, go ahead.
Yeah, couple of things. Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe when Mary asked the question earlier, what's the difference between an ordinance and a policy? The policy is what governs us. We're making a rule that governs us. An ordinance basically governs the citizens of the town. So policies are about what we do, and that's why they're so important. I would be very reluctant. I'm with Merrill on this. I would be reluctant to proceed with decision making and open ourselves up to being an arbitrary and capricious, making arbitrary and capricious decisions. You can imagine I'm a fairly strong believer in policy. That being said, I'm going to disagree with Sarah in as much as I'm not sure that there's any reason, since I don't think we're going to meet in the interim between now and the 28th. I don't know that there's any reason to adopt this as an interim policy for those 2 weeks, because we're not going to make a decision within those 2 weeks. I think there are enough questions that have been raised. I do think I'd like to do some more thinking about the word sponsor, and I might, if I could come up with a better word that does what number of people have suggested. I agree with trying to have that kind of a capacity to make decisions about what should come on our agenda, and whether it's in the thought of having either a sponsor or a petition. I'd have to think about that. So I'm reluctant to move ahead on an interim basis. I'd actually like us to do some work. This is the dilemma of, I think Merrill did a great job. I feel very comfortable with much of what's in here. I do think Mary Garish's suggestions with regard to connecting 16 and 8.5 makes a certain amount of sense, just because they relate to each other. And I'd have to think about some of her other suggestions, but that's why having this discussion, I think, is really helpful. And this is why we've tried to have a 2-week or 2-meeting process. So that's where I'm at. I'll give up the floor.
Just want to chime in quick. I just wanted to let you understand, I don't think we're going to be in the interim. That's why I wanted an end date of our next meeting. I think I do agree with you that I do want some channels to be in place of how that's going to happen, how people can apply. I do feel that's a little exclusive, but yeah, I just wanted to let you understand. I don't think we're going to meet in the meantime.
Jeannie, you have your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Hi, I would like to second Sarah's motion. I feel like I would just feel more comfortable having something, an interim policy in place, and knowing that this is not necessarily exactly the policy that we will approve, but something along these lines is what we're planning to approve. It just I'm uncomfortable not having anything in place. So I would like to second.
That's a second. So I think, Sarah, if yours was a motion as opposed to a suggestion, then I believe we have a motion on the floor. Is that what you intended, Sarah?
So I can make a motion to approve a policy that will end on, what is our next meeting date? Sorry,
September 28th would be the next date.
September 28th. So the policy will be in place until September 28th, and that will end at that point. That's my motion.
Okay, well then I think we have a motion on the floor. If Jeannie, who's gone dark, if that's what you intended to second, and I would now, I'm going to close this to citizen discussion. I'm going to ask for board discussion. If there's any further board discussion at this point before we vote on Sarah's motion. So there are a number of things we can look into. I think certainly timing is one of them. There are a number of instances in this where it refers to painting, where it might refer to artwork or sculpture or signs or something. I do think there are a number of things that we could tighten up about this. I like the idea of there being some sort of override thing if a sponsor is not easily found, but I could see how that could go badly wrong too. So my opinion would be yes, that we should have some sort of interim policy, that we should acknowledge that this is not the complete and final work on this issue, but I hope people will go ahead and move this forward. So that's my opinion. Just speaking for myself on that, but unless there's any other board thoughts, I'm going to call the question. I ask you all to unmute yourself, please. And all in favor of passing this on a 2-week interim basis, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, so we're gonna have to do a roll call on this, and we'll do it in the standard fashion. I'm going to start with Bruce. How do you vote on this question?
No.
And Jean, how do you vote on this question? She said yes, even though we couldn't hear her. Jeannie Jenkins?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Jeannie Jenkins, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jim, how do you vote?
Yes.
Sarah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, and I also vote in the affirmative. So we are going to pass this temporary motion for the next couple of weeks. This will be an agenda item on our next meeting. I hope board members will work actively with town staff and with our constituents to talk about and think about how we can make it work for everybody as well as it can. It's probably never going to be perfect, but at least we should have a process, and it should be clear, and it should there should be an orderly way of going about this thing. I think that's probably the goal of this. Dan, go ahead.
Donald, would you like me to ask that Meryl be present for the next meeting, so that I feel like if there are changes on the fly, she can certainly give us an opinion of whether or not it's appropriate from a constitutional or statutory standpoint. So it's up to you folks, but I'm happy to invite her if you think it would be appropriate.
Well, there are two levels. One is that comments could be given ahead of time, which could be pre-vetted by our legal counsel, and then if things come up and on the fly, we could also have her here. It's less expensive to have her here now that we have Zoom, because we don't have to pay her travel time. But Meryl Bent is certainly worth every penny that we pay her. So I'd look to the board for your preferences on that. I guess just a nod, thumbs up for having Meryl at our next meeting, getting some nods. Okay, all right. Yes.
Donald, I would ask, I think you're absolutely correct. If there are board members, obviously you can't have discussion amongst each other, but you could certainly email questions to me that you'd like our counsel to take a look at, and then that way she'll be more prepared for the meeting. I do have a couple of things that we've already talked about tonight, but certainly would like to hear from everybody about specifics that they may want to to have Meryl think about before she attends the meeting. So appreciate those. Thank you.
Okay. We have somebody in the waiting room. So we have just passed this motion, but I'm going to nevertheless admit caller ending in 196 of admitting you to the Bennington Select Board meeting. I'm not sure how the timing works on your comment, but we have just moved on a motion. We're getting ready to move on to the manager's report. But if you're able, please press *6 on your phone, which will unmute you. And again, I apologize that for whatever reason I can't seem to do it myself here. And introduce yourself and tell us what's on your mind.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it's Mike Bethel again.
Okay, hi Mike.
So using my request, since you seem to want to block my request, how does my request go through with this policy? What loops am I going to have to jump through?
Loops?
Well, what loops? What am I going to do? Now that you're totally confused, I think the public, when they want to put something up, this wasn't there for RAD, Rights and Democracy. Now, what do I have to do to get what I want, which you all know what I want?
If a private group or individual desires to have a project considered, it must be sponsored and introduced by one or more members of the Select Board for review and deliberation. If a private group or individual makes such a request, they must designate an individual to be a primary contact as part of the project request package. The primary contact is responsible for submitting any and all forms required by the town manager's office, as well as providing additional information upon request to the town manager's office, DPW, or VTrans as applicable. Any request to install a project originating from the Select Board shall follow the review process with the town manager acting as the primary contact for the project. So, first step is to get everything, your entire proposal to the town manager for the project, and then he will take you to the next steps from there.
And what do I have to do? I have to get 2 people on the Select Board to sponsor this?
No, just one right now. So, and that may change next week. So, right now, I understand.
You people, no offense, you people know what you sound like to the general public.
Well,
I mean, get serious. This is Bennington.
Yeah. So
this is Bennington. We have 15,000 people. We don't have 15 million.
You have no idea how much criticism we got on process for this, Mike.
Somebody's got to jump through hoops to entertain, to put up what Mary Garish and her group did in 5 minutes with you people. And you think that's fair?
There was quite a lot of process that led up to that, and frankly, it was somewhat chaotic because there wasn't a road.
There was a lot of threats. It wasn't chaotic. It was a lot of threats, and you people caved to it.
Mike,
so now what do I got to do?
You're making
threaten a Select Board member to help sponsor this?
That would be a place to start. Yes.
Threaten a Select Board member to get him or her to help sponsor this thing.
You may reach out to a Select Board member to get them to be a sponsor in the interim. In the next 2 weeks, if that's what you want to do, yes.
So after 2 weeks, I don't have to get a Select Board. I can just bring it up in front of you people. No, we're going to review the policy, and you know, I'm happy to talk with you about what the policy should look like. I know I don't want to talk to you, but I want to talk in public. I wish you people would come out of your basement so that we can run the town like we used to run it. Okay, you people are starting to show a level of cowardness that I can't quite believe, to be honest with you. If you don't want to face the public, then maybe you people should get off the Select Board and put people on that want to treat the people of Bennington correct.
It's got to do with public health and safety, and that's...
Oh, they got the kids out here across from me going to school, so you people, come on. But anyway, you can hide all you want. This is not constitutional, I don't believe.
Okay.
But I'm not going to take it to court. If the rest of the people of Bennington want to go along with you people, God bless this poor town.
Look, we're trying to come up with...
I won't put the signs up. You people figure it out. I tried to do this in the beginning. If you remember, Mr. Campbell, the conversation we had, I supported the Select Board. I supported Stu Hurd and the police chief, not to be pushed around by RAD. Do you remember that?
I do, and I do remember you saying, to your credit, that you had nothing against the message of the Black Lives Matter mural.
I don't. It has nothing to do with that.
I understand that.
It has nothing to do
with that.
You and I had
conversations about this.
Right. But I do believe that all lives matter. I do believe our police force deserves some respect, that they can have their lives mattering too. Because if I get in trouble tonight, or you and your wife get in trouble tonight, you're not going to call Mary Garish. You're going to call the police department, and hopefully they'll come in, help you out, save your life. Okay. That's what this is all about. Not the six of you people making some stupid policy that nobody is going to even try to apply. And I'm not going to beg any select board member to go along with any idea of mine, and neither is anybody else. So if you don't want to put up all lives matter and police lives matter or blue lives matter, then don't do it.
Well, this is
but
just
I hope you listen to this meeting tonight. Listen to me. I hope you listen to this meeting tonight, each six of one of you, all six of you, and realize how stupid you sound. So thank you. I'm going to ask a lawyer somewhere. Stu, let me ask you, is there recall in our charter that we can recall you people or what?
There is a recall provision, Mike. You should be aware of that. You're pretty familiar with our charter.
I'm not that familiar, but there is recall. So instead of passing a mayor, we could do a recall thing, get the signatures of 500, and recall the whole select board, and maybe put out one that we get rid of a town manager and bring in an elected town manager. We can do that too, correct?
Well, that would take a charter change.
Right. Well, we're going for a charter change, and I hope we have the signatures for the mayor thing in March.
The recall require a greater number of signatures than what it would take to get a petition article. I think it's by 2/3.
Do you think this is fair, Stu? Can I ask the town manager that question? Do you think this proposal is fair, or did you draft this up, or
Can
what?
you take this offline? Can you take this offline?
Just a minute. So Mike, yeah, this is becoming an inquisition, but I am going to let Stuart answer that question, and then I'm going to end the call, and we're going to move on. We're already over time in our meeting.
I think having a policy in place to govern these kinds of things is fair. We just have to make sure that the policy itself is clear and understandable.
So we'll work on that during the course of the week. I'm happy to talk to anybody about that or receive emails about that.
And who was the one that wanted to take me offline?
That'd be me, Mike.
Well, who's me?
Jean Connor.
All right, thanks. I'd like to talk to you sometime too. Can we do that?
No thanks.
Thank you, Jean. Nice.
Okay, listen, this is kind of devolving. Mike,
You're right, Don. I apologize. You're right. This is pathetic. You take care, folks.
All right, good night. Good night. So it's late. We're getting tired. We may not be our best selves right now. We have, however, moved through item 6 on our public displays item. We're now moving into our manager's report. Stuart, not a long list here, but what have you got for us?
Okay, I've got actually now 2 action items. The first is to appoint the manager, your voting delegate, for the upcoming VLCT annual meeting, as well as the passive and verb board meetings. Passive is the board I serve on. It's the board that provides insurance to municipalities. So I would put myself forward as your voting delegate if you so choose.
I would look for a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, delegate.
Thank you. Thank you. The second was not on the agenda, but I think it went out late today. This is a request for support on a 1-year cooperative community action grant, wherein the hospital, the Department of Health, and the Southern Vermont Medical Center, Department of Health, and the Community Action Group, I believe, would combine to use these funds for a period of a year in the opioid response effort being undertaken by not only by the team, but by these other organizations. Sarah, as the team member from the select board, we've written the proposed letter of support in her name, and we would be looking for you to authorize this letter to be sent as a means of support only.
I would move that we authorize the letter.
Thank you, Bruce. Anyone want to second that?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Jeannie.
It's actually anticipated 2 years.
Well, hopefully we'll get 2 years. That'd be great, Sarah. Yes, I see that. Yes, I'm sorry.
So I do think this is really important. You know, the opioid task force, we frequently go to them and say, what can we do to help? There's very few times that they ask for our help. This is one of the few. So I would strongly support this, and I expect everybody else will too. But why don't I call a vote on it and ask you all to unmute yourselves, and everybody in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. No abstentions. Sarah, thank you very much for continuing to serve on the opioid task force. Stuart, thank you very much for drafting that letter. I recognize it came to me and I kind of shoved it back on your desk, and you were a big support about that. And really, Sarah's doing a lot of the work here, and you're doing a lot of the work, and I just keep shoving things onto your desk. So thank you. Thank you for
That's
that.
okay.
What else you got?
Just two brief announcements. One, if you haven't been up to the Stark Street Playground, please go take a look. Municipal staff really pulled that project together, and it looks really nice. So that is another check on the box for another small park that has been renovated in a very nice way up on Stark Street. The second thing is somewhat sad news, and Sarah, I don't know whether you were planning to comment on this, but I received word from Betsy Greenwald this week that the food truck festival has been canceled for this year. I didn't get to understand whether or not they're going to try to bring it back in the future.
I can comment on that if you like. Yeah, I can comment on that if you like later.
I would love it. And so you're going to do that in another business?
Yes, she's going to do that in another business.
Great. And then the last thing is just a reminder that we will have a discontinuance hearing coming up on October 12th for Town Highway 85, which is the trail. It's a municipal right-of-way that is actually a trail that runs through property from the end of Furnace Brook Road to the Chapel Road. It is a site that EPA is requiring the Vermont Agency of Transportation and the town to cap. So we will be giving up this right-of-way as a means to reduce public access to the property. And that's October 12th. That's it.
Okay. We usually do a calendar item here. It's felt a little bit funny during this summer because we end up just kind of going hand to mouth, but I do feel like if there's anything that people feel should be on the agenda besides the standing item of the police work that the work team's doing and the interim policy that we recognize will be worked on further by next week, and manager's review, which will be coming up towards the end of the month in a personnel fashion. If there's anything else besides that, now would be a time to kind of let us know, or you can certainly let us know by email. Jean?
When are we supposed to hear from the Energy Committee? I'm losing track of time.
The Energy Committee is close, but not quite ready to present. So it may be 2 to 3 more meetings because it's only meeting monthly.
Well, I guess I'd like to move us into other business then. We do have to go into an executive session on a contract matter later on. I recognize that I'm already now 45 minutes behind schedule. But if we could go into other business in a somewhat abbreviated fashion, I know several of you have mentioned things that you wanted to mention. Why don't we go in the order that you introduce yourselves, starting with Bruce, if you have anything, Bruce.
Nothing.
Okay. Jean, anything from you tonight?
Yeah, I was asked to give a report on the status of the school district.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Unfortunately, it is rather long, but I spent a lot of time talking to folks today, so they spend time talking to me, so I don't want to just not report what they spent the time telling me. So I'll
One of the most important things facing us, so go ahead. Thank you.
yeah, I'll read it as quickly as I can. So school started September 8th. As has been the case from the beginning of the pandemic, what I'm about to say could change in an instant, but this is where the SVSU stands today. There was a team of people who worked all summer on coming up with a reopening plan that was safe and could address the needs of the students in the district. To get the pulse of the parents, a survey was conducted to find out how parents felt about in-person versus remote teaching, and they had a great response. There's a phased-in approach in getting everyone back in the classroom with major changes on September 28th and October 26th. Presently, all schools are at 20% in-person capacity 4 days a week. Students who benefit the most for various reasons from in-person instruction were given priority. The rest are learning remotely. On September 28th, if everything goes well until then, there will be a hybrid model in place where groups of students in the elementary schools will be in the classroom 2 days a week and remote 3 days a week, and then they'll switch to even out the time in the class versus learning remotely. The 6th and 9th graders will be doing the same thing if all goes well. They will consider adding a number of students to the hybrid model. By October 26th, the hope is all students will be in the classroom 4 days a week and learning remotely 1 day a week. The buses are being used for transportation and food distribution. The transportation routes are being developed now based on the kids whose parents opted for in-person instruction versus remote. Hubs are being created based on a plan that came out of Governor Scott's office using CARES Act money. So that's essentially daycare and a place for children to learn remotely within the schools for essential workers. Megan Misak has been the leader in forming the 5 hubs in each of the elementary schools. Woodford will not have one due to the size of the space, but children from Woodford can access one of the other hubs. Let's see. The hubs are being staffed with existing workers for the SVSU, mostly paraeducators. They're not open yet, but will open as soon as possible and will grow or shrink as the reopening plan moves or does not move forward based on safety guidelines. There's plenty of PPE for the staff. Projects to improve ventilation are underway in the hopes that they'll all be finished by cold weather when the windows will need to be closed. SVSU used a portion of the Mellon grant they were awarded to develop a virtual family fitness fest. It runs from today until September 18th for children ages 4 to 14. It focuses on wellness, physical health, mental health, nutrition, and safety and wellness. And there's prizes that are available to the participants. The Southwest Vermont Career Development Center, which is the new name of the CDC, is also teaching remotely. Many of the CDC programs are difficult to teach remotely since they're hands-on courses, but they're doing the best they can with remote cameras and a lot of creativity. Ryan Scott, who's the new videography teacher there, gave the CDC a great amount of guidance on what cameras to buy and how to set them up and in training the staff. Mike Lawler said all the year 1 programs are running and almost fully enrolled. Year 2 students will be back in the building starting next Monday. Adult ed classes, including CDL and the LPN class, and there are many others, are happening. Transportation for students outside our community has been challenging, but they're working through that. Both Jim Culkeen, Laura Boudreau, and Mike encouraged people to visit their websites or call if they have any questions. And I mentioned to Jim when I had him on the phone, Jim Culkeen, that it would be great if there was like an update in the banner. And he said he's attempted to do that, but they haven't gotten back to him. So we should hopefully be seeing something in the banner, maybe on a little bit of a regular basis to keep the community aware of what's going on. So sorry that was so long, but everybody's
Well, that's great. It's great. It's a lot in there. My suggestion would be if you're willing to email that, which is probably a printed document, to Nancy Lively, so she doesn't have to take a lot of minutes on it, and she could just probably incorporate the report directly into the minutes.
Yep.
Thank you for that. It's good. It's good. Good to keep in touch with the schools, and I appreciate those of you that are spending a lot of time with the schools right now. It's a really tricky time. Jim, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to remind people that the state passed the budget in the House, and it's on to the Senate. Included in that was $88 million of COVID CARES Fund that has been expanded to include primarily the hospitality industry, including the lodging industry, so that more funds will be available to them. In addition to that, hazard pay has been extended or expanded to include grocery store workers and people that work in funeral homes, among others. And if people have further questions about that, they can call me at 733-2061 for greater detail. Lastly, I want to remember Len Nichols and his family. Many of us know or knew Len Nichols as a man of absolute integrity. And I'll tell you a brief story. When I was about 18, Bill Hogan's had closed, and they were selling off inventory that was under tarps in their back garage. And there was a 63 Chevy Corvair that was so nerdy, it was cool. And I wanted that thing so bad. And my father said, well, let's take it up to Len Nichols and get his opinion on it. And I remember going up there really hoping that Lenny would say, yeah, it's a good deal. Go ahead and get it, Jim. And he came out with a blue rag in his hand, wiping off his hands. And he said, no, Jim. He said, this is not a good idea. And I was crestfallen. And if for those of you who can't visualize the 63 Corvair, it's the one that Ralph Nader said was unsafe at any speed. Nevertheless,
it is a nerdy looking car, Jim.
It was beautiful, though. I loved it. Yeah, it was great. Anyhow, over the years, I always trusted Lenny. And if I was buying a new to me used car, I would bring it up to him and have him take a look at it. And if it passed the test, I would buy it. Or if I was going to take an extended trip, I'd have Len look it over. And you know what? Keith Nichols and his son have carried on that tradition. I still do business with him. And Len's other sons are both people of integrity. And I can't leave out Mrs. Nichols, who has always been such a generous and kind individual. And Len Nichols and his family they're wonderful people. And I want to remember them tonight.
Thank you, Jim. Truly a wonderful Bennington family. Certainly very generous and helpful to so many of us. But thank you for those words. Sarah, do you have anything that you'd like to add before we move into an executive session?
Sure. Yeah, I have to backtrack a little bit for adding to our upcoming agenda. Is that okay?
Sure.
About that. To add to next week, Battle Day update and also other business. I just want to give a little bit of bad news, I guess, on our upcoming Bennington Food Truck Festival. We've heard from many vendors, past attendees, and citizens. They voiced concerns about COVID. So this is myself and my co-organizer, Betsy COVID. Just the two of us have decided that we are canceling this year. It's due to the space that we have. We just had School Street and the Heart Lot. And our turnout has been fabulous in the past. We've had between 6,000 to 8,000 people. And It's food. People are taking off their masks. We've heard many concerns. Due to that, we're canceling that. So unfortunately, it's not going to happen this year.
It's going to be a lean year. It's going to be a lean year on so many fronts. But listen, if we do get a vaccine, I hope you'll be back double strength next summer.
We will. And I hope anybody that's upset and disappointed, I get it. We're upset too. But I encourage you to be involved next year and volunteer.
Right. Well, thank you for that. So I'm going to look for a motion to go into executive session on a contract matter. Will we need to ask Cat TV to stay in the waiting room and come out of executive session?
That would be my request.
Mike Cutler, I know it's been a long night for you already. We're 36 minutes over our normal time, but would you be willing to hang in there for at least 15 minutes? And if we come out of executive session, we will be able to take a vote then?
No problem.
Thank you. You're a good man. All right. Vote to go into executive session, possibly coming out to take further action on a contract matter. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So thank you for joining us, everybody. I am now going to kick. I'm not going to kick her out. I'm going to say thank you to Nancy Lively. Good night, Nancy. Thank you for being with us. Cat TV, I'm going to move you to the waiting room where you won't be able to hear us, and then we'll drag you back in about 15 minutes, okay? Executive session. We are now in open session. And I wonder if this is Sarah. Hang on just a second while I find out who this is. Is this you, Sarah? Caller ending in 359. Sarah, is this you?
R6.
*6, Sarah, if it is you. I've got to figure out why this thing won't. Must be a setting.
Yes, it's Sarah.
Okay, good. Phew. Glad it's not
Yeah,
something.
that was unfortunate.
All right, so Sarah's back in the meeting. We're coming out after police union negotiations. We've been presented by a proposal from town staff that was aggressively negotiated on both sides. We think it's a good proposal. We think it invests in people that we need and believe in, and we also feel it is gets us closer to being competitive with other towns of our size. So, do I have a motion on the police union negotiations?
Yes, I would move that the select board authorize the town manager to sign the contract on behalf of the select board with the police union, and put in the name of the correct name. The New England Police Benevolent, so, or is it?
And you're right, Bruce. NEPBA.
Yep.
They are now represent most of the police departments in the state of Vermont.
Okay, is that motion to authorize you to sign that contract?
Well, actually,
Or is it,
the motion should be to.
or do we sign it?
You will sign it. We will ask you to sign it, but the motion should be to accept the proposal.
Okay, so that's what I'll move. I'll move that we accept the proposal of the New England Police Benevolent Association and the negotiators from that.
The union must also vote.
I know. Yep.
So this will be a three-year contract.
It is 3-year contract, right?
Okay,
Which
do I
is
have
a
a second?
big benefit.
Have we lost Jeannie again? Jeannie, are you still with us? Oh, that was Jeannie. Good. Okay. So, do I have a second on this?
Sarah can second that.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So we have Sarah by phone only at this point, so we have a second. Any further discussion by the board? I just think we would like our PD department to know that we're signing this enthusiastically, hoping that that this is something that you can feel good about, and know that we, as I say, appreciate your work.
We feel good about it.
We recognize that this is a difficult time. Going through police reform is not easy. It's getting at something that's very important to all of us, and we realize it's hard, but we also appreciate the work you do for our community. So, having said that, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, Stuart, thank you for negotiating this.
I move we adjourn.
Okay, do I have
I
a second?
second that.
Okay, I have a
Second, Sarah Perrin.
second. It's now 9:03. I'm going to hear about this from Jim Carroll. But anyway, thank you, everybody. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? No. All right. Good night. Thank you very much. Cat TV, thank you very much for hanging in the wings while we did that. The timing's sort of important on this for everybody. We appreciate it.